Greetings, Craddock here. So I was initially very discouraged upon seeing the 270 notes because there was a 14.5 Greaterus nerf to the Firebird set. Now, guaranteed I was expecting a large decrease. I wasn't expecting that much, and it actually put the build lower than some of our other options as for solo push. Now, the increase that they actually took a look at feedback. They came back with some revised numbers here. The 6-piece going now from 2,000 to 5,000. This is an increase of about 5.8 Greaterus worth of power. So as compared to PTR last iteration, it will now be only a decrease of 8.8 or close to 9 Greaterus worth of power. So this puts it in a great spot, close into those S tier builds such as Bone Spear, such as Valor. Yeah, so very excited to play this season. Hope you are too. Before we get going with the full build guide, there are some minor changes that I made here. So in advance, the numbers in the video might look different, but just know that the D3 planner will be updated with these changes. I've decided to put life per hit on the weapon just to give even more recovery. Bracers already has life per hit as well. How I did this was I shifted the RCR from the weapon to the ring, and this is slightly less RCR than originally, but it should be fine in my opinion. Lower Paragon, you'll run the int with cooldown glove. Higher Paragon can run average damage on the ring, and then run the RCR on the glove instead. And something interesting here is that you don't really need the attack speed on the Enchantress anymore, so for that skill slot I recommend going the second life passive. Now this particular build, since we don't have the Zodiac, like I mentioned further in the guide, it is still going to be more advantageous to run the Enchantress for that cooldown reduction. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the guide. Alrighty, let's get into this build. This is super cool. This is a new pet build for the wizard class. We're going to be using our mirror images to help proc the Firebird 6-piece via the Flame Blade skill. So that's the main interaction here. Ignition coming from the Disintegrate, and our procs are going to come from Explosive Blast, and the Flame Blades primarily used from the mirror images. So yeah, pretty cool interaction here. This will be a channeling build. We will have the Death Wish in the build, however it is a non-shielding build. So something to note is that I tested out a couple of different setups on the PTR. One of the configurations I was testing was a shielding setup, and investing higher in vitality and life percent did improve the toughness of the images, but they were still dying. So something we can do is, the better setup in my mind is actually to run this non-shielding setup that lets us invest more into main stat, into intelligence, rather than having to dump more into vitality, right? So we have the Enforcer in the mix here to help keep our pets alive. And as far as I could tell, the multiplier here isn't really increasing their combustion proc damage, but it's only increasing the damage from the skills that they do. So the big benefit here is actually the damage reduction for the pets, not the multiplier here. But aside from that, we're going a close-up build, a melee build here. Felt a lot better considering the mirror images wonky AI. They like to run off when they're casting Explosive Blast into Never Never Land, right? So two things are going to help us deal more damage. One is the melee build being up close and personal. It seems to me that the first thing that they taunt, they like to focus on, like to attack with their Flame Blades, so that's going to be one way we're going to enable this. Another way is we're going to be including a lot of cooldown reduction in this build. High cooldown reduction will let you reset or recast the mirror image duplicates skill more often. This lets you get up to 3 casts per convention cycle to be able to deal damage in, which is really neat. Another way here, we're actually getting more Firebird procs on the targets that we're going after is going to be the Tasker and Theo. Increasing the attack speed of our pets going to be very helpful here. I don't know if the attack speed on gear is helping that, but the Tasker and Theo definitely increases the attack speed of the pets. So something to note here is we have the Captain Crimsons giving us that nice multiplier from our cooldown reduction. Resource cost reduction is also going to be counted as damage reduction. Let's focus on the multipliers though. Going through, we have the Endless Walk, Orb of Infinite Depth with the 40% there, double damage from EW. We have the Convention, 3 times damage on Fire Cycle. We have the Death Wish, a 4.25 times multiplier there while we're channeling. We're always pretty much going to be channeling in this build. The resource cost reduction that we allocate in the set will, combined with the APoC on the source, will let you channel continuously on a single target. So even if you get a single target Rift Guardian with this build, you will be able to manage the resource, which is quite nice for damage, as you can imagine. Keeping that up is going to be important. Audacity Trapped coming into the mix for multipliers. We also have Elemental Exposure. So we have Arcane from Disintegrate, Fire from Explosive Blast. You have Cold from the Frost Nova, so technically it would be best if you could get a Lightning damage mod. On my run in the PTR, I actually had cold damage, so it's just something, 15 to, actually it's going to be 16 to 21% multiplier here. So quite nice there. Other damage relating things that are adding together in the additive pool include Unwavering Will, 10%, and then we also have Taeguk ramping up that additive damage pool quite nicely. It's going to be nice for our channeling setup here. We also have AUG hilts here with the multiplier and the elite damage, going to be very important. So focusing on the elites is going to be not a priority, but going to be important to engage elites consistently as you go through the Rift. I found if I engaged too many elites, I started to get CC'd too much, because the other thing this build lacks is crowd control immunity. So you don't have crowns, you don't have the invigorating gemstone in this particular variation. So keeping that elite count low, unless you know you have a power pylon, you have a conduit, something like that to kill them with, is going to be something that you balance as you go through the Rift. Now, to be able to stay alive, you notice we're cutting a lot of things. We don't have Mantle of Channeling in the primary setup here. We have damage reduction, 15%. We also have elite damage reduction here, going to help us out quite a lot. We have the damage reduction from our resource as well on gear. As far as cooldown and resource is concerned, I actually advise cooldown and resource on the weapon, cooldown on the ring, the gloves, you have cooldown on the shoulder piece, resource on the shoulder piece, and then you have the diamond in the helmet. We have cooldown wise, we have evocation 20%, we have the enchantress's 10%, and we have Paragon, of course, for both resource and cooldown. Now, something to note here that you can do when you get to higher Paragons is you're going to have more investment into int Paragon, of course. You can dump a lot of int into Paragon, which is quite nice. I still advise defensively to put a little bit of vitality in. That felt good to me, but if you want to risk it all and just dump it all into intelligence, you can do that with this build. But 800 to 900k felt very good to me. And yeah, so we have damage reduction and elite damage reduction from the AUG Guilds, the damage reduction from the Crimsons. We also have DR from Safe Passage, so as you teleport, you get the DR there. You have armor from both the Taeguk and the Unwavering Will, resistance as well from UW. And yeah, some other component that is not immediately noticeable is the Frost Nova here is actually going to keep you from taking a lot of damage, because you're going to be crowd controlling the monsters before they crowd control you. This is also helpful because it lets your images, which your images can still be CC'd, even though they don't take a lot of damage, they can still be crowd controlled, frozen, that jailed, that sort of thing. Now, something to note here, because Frost Nova is on the bar, the images will also cast Frost Nova, so it's going to be like Frost Nova Heaven all over the screen. I do not know if they proc the deep freeze component. I don't think they do, so that interaction is not there, I do not think, but regardless, you should be able to manually cast this and keep the 10% crit. Also going to be a nice offensive increase here, right? So, notable, we do have flame blades on the bar, so at an advanced level, when you're getting into these high-end pushes, something you can try if you know that you're not going to be CC'd, if you're not going to be knocked back, stunned, frozen, nightmared, anything. Right before your fire convention cycle, you can cast manually your flame blades to hit, 10, 15, 20 enemies, and get a little bit more elemental damage bonus, right? So you've got the 40 here, but if you were able to do that right before your fire cycle, that's something you can do to min-max with this build. But I found, personally, it was very difficult because, as aforementioned, you're going to get CC'd a lot in this build, and the risk you're taking when you're manually casting your Spectral Blade is that you will drop Taeguk stacks, and dropping Taeguk stacks is so much of a larger damage increase than the slight increase from your fire elemental percentage that you would get from manually casting this, that oftentimes it's just simply not worth the risk. But even if you're not casting this manually right before fire, it's still a lot of damage that this build is putting out. As mentioned before, somewhere in the range of like 5 tiers above the manually casted Spectral Blade attack speed based build. So yeah, it's it's quite a lot. Anyway, defensively, this should keep you on track. So as an alternate variation, you could actually drop the AUG Hills and then run Mantle of Channeling with Krelm's Buff Bracer. Mantle of Channeling giving you general multiplier and damage reduction while channeling, so that will mostly make up for the overall benefit of the AUG Hills, but it won't make up for the elite damage, so you're definitely losing that. And then you also have the Krelm's Buff Bracer here, making you immune to knockback and stun effects, helping you engage those elites. Rift fishing will be a lot easier with this variation especially, so if you're looking to go a little bit more defensive as well, this will also be a good choice. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this push build. I'm certainly excited to run it in season, and yeah, while it's definitely topping the charts, it's vastly stronger than the flame blades, the manual flame blades, which can be considered a detriment. I would have preferred those two builds to be almost on the same level, but nevertheless, this is an engaging variation, a fun build. I hope you enjoy it too.